Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Gig Member Q&A call. Today is Tuesday, February the 7th. It's a rainy day here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, but we're happy to be with you guys. We've got a great guest joining us today in Dave Barton, PGA member, Executive Director of the National Alliance for Accessible Golf. James, this is a great topic that we're going to talk about today, one that personally I'm really happy that we're touching on and helping Dave tell his story and the story of their association a little bit. You know, my nephew Luke suffered a TBI, traumatic brain injury, when he was just a little guy, and so you know, accessible sports and adaptable sports has been something that's been a big part of his life. And you know, I've seen all the great things that can result when people with disabilities get involved in sports like golf and others too. But you know, the National Alliance for Accessible Golf is doing some great work. There's some great things that are being done for those individuals, and there's some great programs that are being done for the club owners and operators as well to make their facilities more accessible for these people. So, you know, that's what they're all about, increasing participation of people with disabilities in the game that we all love so much. And so I'm super excited to be talking about this topic today.
Scott, whenever I hear that theme music coming on, it gets me excited because you're right. It's like it's another month has gone by, and it gets us a chance to have our live Q&A call. And I couldn't agree with you more. I connected with Dave. Oh my goodness. I don't know. Maybe it was 8 months ago, 10, 12 months ago. Time flies. He's had various different roles in the industry, but when he became the executive director of NAAG, I mean, it was a no-brainer that we were going to have him on our program and our platform. We've had great other individuals like Todd Kierstead from Paragolf Canada that have come on and talk about this wonderful topic, and it's great to have Dave join us. So let's bring him into the studio and have Mr. Dave Barton live from your hotel room in Orlando, Florida, because you're on the road sharing the gospel of the National Alliance of Accessible Golf. Dave, welcome to the Gig Live Q&A call.
Well, it's great to be here. It's definitely not raining here in Orlando. It's fantastic golf weather. It'd be a great day to be on the course, but it's a better option to talk with you two gents this afternoon. So certainly appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thanks for taking some time, Dave. I know that you've been on the road for a little while. You've been busy, as I said, spreading the word at the PGA show recently, and now I believe you're at the GCSA show, right, in Orlando as well. And you said you gave a presentation yesterday. But before we kind of get into Dave Accessible Golf and all that means and stuff like that, you know, you've given me a little bit of background, and I think it's a fascinating kind of journey that you've been on. Could you share with our listeners in Gig Nation a little bit about your path and all the different interesting stops along the way that's led you to be the executive director of this important organization?
Yeah, I guess it probably starts with being an average student in college. When I got to be a senior, I decided I needed to go drop out and figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And that led to 22 years in the Navy. Had a great career flying helicopters there. And when I was about to get out of the Navy, I was reasonably sports minded. I loved golf. And so I just kind of migrated to see if I could find a path for a second career in the golf business. And that led me to basically working towards becoming a PGA member, and then seeing where that journey took me. And it's been great. I had the opportunity early in my career to work with some Special Olympians at one of the schools I was going to. So I got kind of a taste of working with individuals with disabilities. And then, you know, you go to the course, you get behind the counter, you start working, you learn how to run the business. And then into my career for years, I crossed an organization up in Maryland called the Salute Military Golf Association that worked with veterans. And so I've always found it just enjoyable to teach a little bit, but also to work with individuals that present, you know, unique challenges to me as an instructor to, you know, what do I need to do to adapt to help a golfer with any type of ability, right? Whatever that may be. So that led me to an opportunity here at the start of last year around the PGA show to consider taking this position with the Alliance, and I'm loving it. It's been a really good, busy year, and I've about got my hands wrapped around what we're doing.
That's awesome. That's great. And Dave, I know education has always been something that has been close to your heart and kind of at the forefront as a PGA member and you, in your time with the NGCOA United States, and then now with regards to NNAG. And as you know, education is really what the gig platform is all about. And so I was hoping today that you'd help educate us, those of us that are operators in the business or that are around the industry, because the concept, I've heard this many times, and I've certainly heard it talked about more in the last maybe 4 or 5 years about this opportunity, this need to provide this great game of golf that we all love from cradle to grave, that the golf can provide to a wider audience, right? And that's I no doubt probably part of the NAAG's mission. So Scott, I know we've got some questions that have been submitted by Gig Nation, and we've got about that. But let's go to our second question, I think, Scott, about what exactly, when we talk about accessible golf, I guess, when we use these different words about disabled or about disability or accessible or inclusivity, all these very important words. How does it relate? How does this word relate to your organization? Because I think what people would be surprised about is a wider scope than what we tend to stereotype.
Yeah. So, in our kind of circles, there's access and inclusion, right? And so access, it all starts with access, which is really the physical barriers that eliminate an individual from having the same kind of access to do anything, whether it's shop or play golf, that someone who is not disabled. And that basically means, can this individual get from the parking lot to the pro shop to the 19th hole and have the same enjoyable experience as you and I might have without having to dodge things, go 100 yards to come in the building? Can they get on the greens and those sorts of things? So that's what access is. So in order to have an inclusive environment, right, the golfers have to be able to play. They have to be able to get there. They have to be invited into that particular social aspect of that organization or that golf course. So inclusion becomes possible when you have a physical environment that allows it, and then you now start developing a culture with your staff and your members and your golfers that, hey, we're all about everybody playing golf here. Because in the end, that's what the individuals with disabilities want. They just want to have the same access to the same things that many of us kind of take for granted in our daily lives.
And I apologize if I'm not correct with some of the terminology, because this is always the challenge when we're ignorant of some of the specifics of different things. So, but I mean, one of the things you and I have chatted about previously is that, disabled or is not always visible, right? I mean, it's like a disability is not always obvious, right? And when you look at, for example, people on the golf course, or you look at maybe some of the various different events, I know that even, and I wanted to ask you about this as well, the tournament that was just recently held, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know that they had various different flights within regards to I think it's the U.S. Amateur maybe, that had different flights within that. Can you maybe just talk a little bit more about the visible and non-visible when we talk about people that might be considered to seeking access that might have a disability, I guess?
Absolutely. Generally speaking, the disability or impairment categories, there's mobility, whether it's a prosthetic leg or prosthetic arm, or whether it's a seated golfer. There's intellectual, Special Olympics would be an example of that. Neurological, which could be a nervous system issue or injury that resulted in a TBI or brain injury that causes some sort of a disability with that person. And sensory, of course, which is sight and hearing. And the event you're talking about, the U.S. Adaptive Open that was held at Pinehurst number 6, they had 96 participants, a pretty good split of women and men, ranging, I think, from age I think it was 13 or 14 up to 85 as far as the age group goes there. And, they had 8 impairment categories kind of within those categories I just taught, to try to be a little more accommodating for the different sorts of categories. So it's pretty broad. And when you talk about the non-visible disabilities, I think that's one that causes, I think, folks concern who are fearful of what they might say that might be inappropriate or whatever. But the reality is that I think individuals with disabilities and their families, they understand that, most folks are well-intentioned in what they're trying to do. And so we encourage people to get over the fear of that and just communicate with them like you would with any other person. And there's certainly some buzzwords out there that are not encouraged anymore in this world, whether it's crippled or challenged or, some of these things. But in the end, I think just speaking with them and getting over that hurdle of engaging, you'll find that in the end, they're just normal people that want to talk and get along. So I think that's one of the things we advocate for, and we speak about that when we spoke at the PJ last week, and we spoke with the GCSA folks yesterday. We talk about disability etiquette, things you should or should not do, and so great stuff for golf course owners and operators to put in as part of their on-board training when it comes to working with different kinds of customers.
Well, and that is that's a great point right there, I think, which is just, I mean, Scott and I, we've worked, I've been around hundreds of facilities, obviously. Mm-hmm. And it's really only in the last couple of years that we've started to have these conversations. We've started to talk about DE&I and about different types of things and what that all means, and talking about in our training, or talking about in our policy book, or having kind of strategies to attract and to retain and to make welcome our facilities, right, and stuff like that. So I think, Scott, our next question has to do with this kind of the misconceptions, and for the facilities, and Dave, obviously our audience are managers, golf course owners, operators from all around. We're spending our days dealing with Mrs. Jones, whose clubs were dirty and the bag drop, and Mr. Smith, who didn't get a Saturday morning tea time, and all the challenges that are facing golf course operators and owners right now. And then we have to also tackle all the elements of the golf industry, and I'm sure that's probably one of your challenges and opportunities, which is kind of making this a priority and everyone's kind of within the pie. But what are some of the misconceptions, I guess, that you come across, or that people come across when they're talking about golf and talking about being inclusive of everyone and all of their abilities?
Yeah, I think right now, obviously, for all the right reasons in golf in general, the ED&I or D&I, because there's lots of ways to say that depending on who you're talking to on
right.
Chicken or the egg, whichever one it is, right, comes first. But it's we're a piece of that in the context of individuals with disabilities probably represent the most diverse population on the planet, because diversity chooses anyone. Disabilities will choose anyone at any time, and so we're part of that conversation. But admittedly, and for a lot of the right reasons, most of the conversation comes down to demographics with the diversity discussion, whether it's men, women, African Americans, white, getting them to play golf, getting them in the workspace, and other demographics. So we're happy to be in that conversation. And I think for a lot of owners and operators, I get asked this question. I go, well, why do I need to do this or spend this money to make this course, accessible or not? And there are laws that talk about that. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later. But my answer to that is, are there any courses that can't stand to have one more customer? I mean, it's just another customer who wants to play golf. And so it's just another group of people out there playing. As a matter of fact, I got a couple statistics here. These United States, there's 2018 NGF study, 14 million individuals with disabilities are interested in playing golf, 14 million.
Wow.
6 million reported they had played in the past, but no longer do. And there's about 600,000 as of 2018 currently engaged. Now that number's got to be higher now for a range of reasons, but I'm very interested in kind of why 6 million don't play anymore. Is it because of access? Did they age out of it? Was the equipment not there for their particular type of disability? So there's all these things to kind of dig into to try to improve that. So it's, I think, misconceptions is a little bit of a lack of awareness of how big this population is and how desirous they are to play golf. As a veteran myself, I'm super thrilled to support and watch how veterans programs have taken off, around the country. And unfortunately, for some of the wrong reasons, these individuals come back from a tough situation and have some different things they've got to work through in life now. But that has brought an amazing amount of attention to this element of golf that has been around for a long time. I believe the National Amputee Golf Association was formed right after World War II, with some individuals coming back from World War II who had, for the most, mobility issues, and they got together, and what used to be called shell shock and some of these things, now PTSD and has evolved. And so golfers with disabilities have been around for a long time trying to get in the game. And I think equipment, technology is so amazing now. I just think the sky's the limit for where it's going to go for these folks who just really want to get out there and play golf with their friends. And it's not about putting them all on the course at the same time with all their other disabled friends. It's like being in the Saturday Skins game with everybody else and taking their money, whatever that may be. And so that's kind of where it is. So, that's one misconception, is the awareness, and I think a little bit of fear of the unknown, as you mentioned before, with how do you talk to individuals with certain kinds of disabilities without feeling like you're being offensive. So a little bit of a hesitance because of the fear, but, kind of once you get past that, it's all good. I mean, I would encourage anyone and everyone to try to get around in with someone that's in a seated golf or with a prosthetic leg. And, honestly, I believe it'll change your life, and it'll put a whole new perspective on, your view of having a bad day on the golf course, kind of stuff. And so, yeah.
It's not fair, obviously, but life's not fair. But, I think that for an ignorant person, they would be concerned about things like slow play. They'd be concerned about things like, equipment, assisted equipment, wrecking the greens. They'd be concerned about, what if, someone falls over and, doesn't work the way around, and am I going to have more liability than I would normally have because my golf course was built 100 years ago and it wasn't built to be accessible to people of all types. So how do you talk about some of those misconceptions to someone that is afraid, I guess, because they don't have the knowledge of some of those issues, that they shouldn't be afraid of them? I guess.
Really good question. You hit two really good parts. One, on the single rider golf cars or adaptive vehicles and damage to greens. Any device in the hands of an untrained individual is potentially problematic. And the same can be said for a push cart that gets dragged over a green by a person walking.
Or a golf cart with a guy that's had too many beers.
Or a person who's wearing soft spikes who doesn't know how to pick his feet up when he walks on the green. So these things are all possible. So that's what we try to do, is we try to kind of qualify that with, when it comes to slow play. I think I can safely say that individuals who find themselves on the side of the conversation where there's a perception there's slow play are probably the least likely to play slow. I mean, it's just, it's out there. I mean, I don't know if you've ever met Tom Houston. Tom Houston's 81 years old, been a seated golfer for almost 35 years. He shot his age about a month and a half ago. Phenomenal guy out of Pennsylvania. And I played with him recently. It was me and his wife, who's also a seated golfer. And we played in under 4 hours, and we kept up with a threesome in front of us. And so it's just a huge misconception as far as pace of play goes. And I would doubt that any golf club operator in the world can say that he doesn't have a list of 10 people at their club that are not disabled, who are the slowest golfers in the history of the game, right? And so I think in the end, it's usually a duck calling a duck when it comes to slow play. So, but we fight that. So we talk about that briefly, and we actually had a great question at the GCSA yesterday. One of the operators there asked about this thing you just spoke about, which is potential damage to greens. And so, when these individuals get these vehicles for whatever reason, whether it's a solo rider or a pair golf or stuff like that, certainly there's a little training they get on how to operate it. right? But then again, course conditions can play into that, and advising owners and operators on what they can or should not do regarding cart path only, so that they don't draw the ire of someone being upset with that is a lot of what we educate about as well.
Scott, I think our next question, I think, talks about, your organization, Dave, and when we talked with Todd about with Paragolf Canada, and when we've looked more into, for one of the things that we think GIG can do is as we're doing today, is help educate operators and facilities about this opportunity, about this community, about not to be afraid of the unknown, all those types of things. Mm-hmm. No doubt you have many challenges. What are some of the challenges that you face with the Alliance and I guess growing your influence?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We've been around for almost 21 years. We were formed in 2001 with Trey Holland and the USGA and Betsy Clark, and I answer to a very strong board. I've got representation from every leading golf association on the planet that I answer to. So we're in a position to really do some new and exciting things. My predecessor was amazing, Steve Jubb. He was here for 7 years and still involved in Special Olympics. And so, the reality is, what we do takes money, and so we certainly are, as a nonprofit, as a 501c3, we're always looking for supporters who believe in our mission. We're a little bit unique in this space in that, we don't run competitions because there's some fantastic organizations out there in the United States, and I know they're in Canada. I certainly can't name them all, but Paragolf Canada is amazing. Down here in the States, we got the U.S. Adaptive Golf Association Alliance, the U.S. Disabled Golf Association, National Blot, and more that run great competitions themselves. And I think what the USGA did when they had their tournament, it's kind of lighting a nice little fire to these organizations, and it's kind of steering them towards working a little bit more together in some areas to kind of, foster that mission where they can still have their own piece of the pie in the region they're at and do what they're doing, which is great things, but also kind of work towards larger efforts. So we're looking at how we can fill in some of the gaps where we're not doing competitions. And so a lot of our focus moving forward is going to be on, developing prioritized and, really good quality education that can be shared and easily accessed by owners and operators to answer some of these questions and get some checklists and tools and things they can do to do this. And then, also a little bit of research. We're interested in that. And I think we're in a position to help lead that sort of research with some other organizations in the country to kind of better define this audience, look at the health therapeutic benefits, and just to kind of position us for where we're at now versus where we were 5 or 6 years ago. So that's exciting to me. And, that's what gets me motivated in the morning when I wake up, I guess is the best way to say it. And of course, we've got a little bit of a grant program, and we'll support grassroots programs. We're involved with Make Golf Your Thing here in the United States as far as part of their process. And so, the sky is really kind of the limit for that sort of stuff, but every limit is based on what you can do, right? I guess is the way to say it.
Dave, if a couple questions for you.
Sure.
When you talk about kind of the 14 million, 6 million, 600,000, and I think about things like, for example, if I was a disabled individual, or if I was, looking for accessibility, like, where do I go to get a lesson? How do I know what facility has got open doors? And is where do I go? What course A is welcoming and what course B is going to be a challenge? Like all that stuff. So, like, even from an instruction standpoint, is there, even in golf professionals, when you talk about growing their business or finding an expertise, and I know some golf professionals that have got into that ability, that knowledge. They've educated themselves on how to teach people with, once again, whether an amputee or different types of things. So are those kinds of things readily available? Is that information readily available to the consumer? or is that something that the industry needs to get better at doing?
Yeah, it's available, but I definitely believe it could be more readily available or easier to find. Couple examples would be our organization maintain a database. We still have one, but people and parts move, and so it's always kind of a moving target on where adaptive vehicles may be. The PGA, I'm not paid for PGA plug here, but I'll do my plug for the PGA as a member. The PGA has done a fantastic job with PGA Hope and educating golf instructors around the country on that. And now with their launch of PGA Coach, consumers can go to PGA Coach. You can, find a coach in your area, and then it becomes, okay, who in this area does adaptive golf? And so that little network ties in pretty good. I get a lot of calls to our phone number on our website from golfers who are absolutely looking for, where is this, where can I do this? I'm moving down to Florida. I'm a seated golfer. And so I've had the luxury and the thrill of being able to make some phone calls, almost like a detective sometimes, to find out is the cart still there. And so, that's kind of a long answer for saying it's hard to consolidate some of those locations into one sort of thing, but Make Golf Your Thing too, the Make Golf Your Thing database that launched last year. They've got the opportunity for programs when they list themselves as a program that teaches golf to use some keywords and things like that, like adaptive golf and some of those things, to get people to search for these programs. But they're becoming easier to find, which is a positive. And I think and we encourage folks to never hesitate to reach out to us directly. And I don't know all the answers, but I can guarantee you're going to get a good effort from me to try to find the answer that you're looking for, whether you're an owner or operator who wants some advice on how to do the things in their course they need to do, or if you're a golfer who simply wants to find someone who can teach them with their specific requirements.
Once again, I know that they say there's no stupid question, but I'm not sure I always believe that. You talk about kind of a cart being available. So is this an adaptive cart that a facility would have, or that they own, that they rent out to a golfer that needs an adaptive cart, as opposed to the golfer bringing their own kind of cart with them? It's obviously a specialized vehicle, and it's normally offered by the facility. Is that correct?
Well, they are. Every facility does not have them, and it's unlikely in my lifetime that'll be the case, because everything comes at a price. They're as affordable as they can be. I think they range in price, give or take, from $16,000 to $24,000 or so per unit. The Americans with Disability Act, at least in the United States, does not mandate that a golf course has to have that vehicle, right? What it mandates is that they have to provide access to the same products and services that an individual without a disability would have. And so usually when you ask the ADA consultants a question, their answer starts with, it depends. And so in what we are encouraging, owners and operators to do is to, if they don't have the ability to find a vehicle or to purchase it, to have it available, work with other golf courses in their area to maybe kind of cut the cost down on having access to one or two, and have like kind of a shared resource to get the ball rolling. I mean, the reality is a seated golfer is not going to show up every day to play your golf course when it comes to misconceptions and things like that. But the courses that succeed with these golfers when this requirement comes up are the ones that, even though they might not have a solution that day, they answer the call and they kind of work to find one, because now they've realized, hey, I've got someone in my community, we can help. And there's lots of different ways, to do that. But yeah, the vehicles are amazing. The two I mentioned are, there's more than two types out there, of course. Some are even homemade, but the wheelbase is no less invasive to a green than a triplex mower. They maneuver around the golf course with great speed. Most of them you get in and out of bunkers, but I mean, I've had trouble getting in and out of bunkers sometimes because of the steepness of it. So imagine trying to go in there with wheels. Very difficult, but they position the rider, and then in these two cases, they lift you up, so you're almost in a standing position to hit the golf ball, which makes all the difference in the world. And so that is a priority discussion point on how to make these vehicles more and more accessible, or more, excuse me, more and more available as we move forward. So looking at how to get those resources located properly is a challenge. And also, they require maintenance just like any other golf cart. So you got to have a place to store them, and I'm sure you've been in your share of cart barns. Once the fleet is there, the normal fleet's there, good luck finding a place to put a chair, much less another vehicle. So, there's these adaptations that have to be made. And again, I really feel like a lot of folks are looking to try to figure out how to do this right now, which is a great thing. I hope that answered your question. That's a good question right there.
No, it sure does. I mean, I think, Scott, what's our next question? But I think it kind of leads into it, right? I mean, yeah, like, what's the message? We've talked about some of those things already, from about the opportunity and about from a business standpoint. I mean, even just simply from a business standpoint. But what else would you add there about, sharing with the golf industry about this opportunity to be more inclusive? And I get back to probably as well, just an awareness of like you said, the language that you use and the tools that you have, and even just being prepared to welcome someone that maybe has a cart or that's asking for a cart. But what would you add to that, Dave?
Well, it starts with this. I kind of mentioned this earlier. Just remember first, they're just customers. Don't complicate it, right? Don't try to overcomplicate it, right? What do you do to make this person want to come play your golf course? And no different than any other customer out there that may not know about your facility. Where's the first place they usually go to find out about your golf course? What would you two say would be? What would your answer to that be? Website, right? We might not have said that in 1975, but we say that now. We say website now. And so then my next question is, okay, that's great. Is your golf course website accessible? Does it have the tools where an individual that has a disability, where words or screens or moving objects and things like that, or vision impaired, will cause them problems? And so we advise courses to consider first making their website accessible. There's a lot of companies out there that do that. We've got a widget on ours where the consumer can click it, select their particular disability issues related to the screen, and they get a customized view. We did not have to change our website. It uses AI to adapt the existing website. Now, if you've got a sophisticated website, that can be a little bit different, but in most cases, it's very affordable to do that. And that in itself sends a message to an individual with a disability: you are open for business, right? You're open and welcome there. Then you take that one step further. A lot of golf courses have the, hey, thanks for playing our golf course, or here's something about our golf course. We appreciate you choosing us. Take that welcoming statement and add a few words in there about accessibility. We welcome golfers of all capabilities. You don't have to get into disabled golfers. Say, listen, we welcome all golfers here. Legally, at least in the States, you can get in, a little bit of trouble if you ask individuals, do you have a disability? You're not really supposed to do that, right?
Right.
But you can put on your website that if you require services to make your experience better at our club, please do your best to give us a call ahead of time so that we can ensure that you walk away here with as a positive experience as the person you came with, right? And that's how you kind of get around that. So those statements do pretty good. Imagery, if you can get some imagery on your site of an individual that has a mobility issue, or has a mobility disability, or whatever that may be, again, paints a great image for someone who says this course is kind of welcoming. We use a picture in our presentation of it's a retail picture, but it's a gentleman more my age who has 2 prosthetic legs. And he's at a store. It might be a Gap, I don't know what it is, but he's looking up at a picture, and it's a gentleman with prosthetic legs, modeling the clothes they're selling in this particular retail store. And, this gentleman's probably 50 years old, and he's probably like, wow, it's about time. It's about time that they're, showing that this works for us too. Next to that is a really young man, probably less than 5 years old, in a wheelchair. And he's looking up at a picture of a little boy in a wheelchair, again, modeling the clothes. And that little boy's impression of that is, I thought I was the only person like that, right? When you're 4 or 5, you don't know what's out there. You probably think, I'm the only person like this. Why am I not out there with my buddies? What's going on? So that picture can change someone's perception, and think about the family members of that younger child. If you're a mom or a dad who's got a child that has a disability, and you see that picture in a golf course that is inviting their child to play there, it's game on. It's life-changing for not just the individual with a disability, but his family, their support group, and everything. So that's kind of low-hanging fruit to get things going. Marketing 101. Show the people you want that you've got people there that play golf there that are welcome just like anybody else.
Yeah, that's great stuff. That's great. Scott, any questions so far for Dave that you've got coming in from our Gig Nation, or that's coming up on the screen here?
Yeah, nothing from the private chat, but friendly reminder to people who are watching live that the live chat functionality is there. So if you do have any questions for Dave that you want to put forth, just feel free to type them in, and we will definitely include them on the show here while we're live.
And I know we got this question previously when we were promoting. We got a couple of questions when we were promoting today's session, Dave, from kind of Gig Nation. I don't know if it's the next one, Scott, but it's really, I think it's similar to what we're kind of talking about, right? I mean, about making your facility more inclusive. You talked about, I love that suggestion about imagery and about the website, and just about kind of the language that you use. And we talked about the cart, and that. Are there some, and then obviously the reality is, there is the law. I mean, like, as you said, Dave, we don't talk about it very often, and it's like anything, you don't talk about it until someone tells you about it, and then and all of a sudden, you've got a legal reason that you're kind of thinking to yourself, man, I should have been aware of that.
Right.
I should have done something about it. So what else is there with regards to A, the law, or B, with regards to other aspects of a facility that you think that a typical golf club maybe doesn't think about, or hasn't had to think about in the past, or should think about with regarding making their facility more inclusive? Is there anything you would kind of add to that?
Sure. Well, as far as the law goes, public accommodations fall under Title III, and it's a big government instruction, and we don't have 16 days to talk about the first 2 pages in that instruction. I mean, it's a typical government instruction. But public accommodations who are affected by the ADA. So private clubs often may not fall under Title III compliance requirements, right? Unless their private club does a lot of public tournaments as a revenue generator for the club, unless they do a lot of weddings that are not for members, they could potentially fall under the public club compliance requirement of the ADA or public accommodation. So,
or if a specific member wants to take them to court, I mean,
anything's possible. The good news is a lot of that hopefully is the exception to the rule. But so what courses can do, what we try to say is, to your point, why worry so much about the law and think more about your particular membership, public or private? Okay, and think about the people that your members might want to bring to the club to play golf, or to do that. Now, just from an access standpoint, not a law standpoint, I'm certainly not getting any younger. There's a lot of people like me that play a lot of golf right now that are members of golf clubs all over the country. What are you doing to keep them happy as a member in 10 or 15 years, when on any given day they could be a different person with how they approach the game of golf? And so, on our site over the last 20 years, we've seriously collected a ton of resources. But usually where we steer people first is the ADA has distilled the golf course requirements out of their instructions. When it came out in 1990, it was only buildings. It did not talk about golf courses. Later, in the early 2000s, they came out with some addendums about recreation facilities, parks, and golf courses. So that's when that came into play. There's a 7-page checklist out there, an 11-page checklist out there with pictures that says, here's what your golf course has to do to be in compliance. And it's really not overly complicated. I mean, there are design features that are always going to be a little problematic at any course, but generally speaking, if they can access the greens, if they can access at least 1 tee box, there's rules, maybe 2 if they've got 5 tee boxes. But all of this is like right there on this checklist. So I encourage golf course owner to take a couple hours, get in a golf cart, go out there and do the checklist, see what your baseline is. And in most cases, I think they're going to find we're a lot better off than we thought we were. And they're not going to have this fear of all these costs that are going to be coming down their way. Do the same thing. Pull up in your parking lot and pretend, and imagine yourself on wheels. Can you get around without there being a problem? So if you do those things, now you know where you stand. It's not a mystery, and you can take the steps from there. There are avenues regarding what the DOJ looks for in enforcement. And quite honestly, let's face it, bandwidth-wise, I don't think the DOJ has a ton of time to kind of get into this. Doesn't make it right or wrong. But, just knock off those low-hanging fruits. But from a cost perspective, depending on how, if you're a mom and pop course, which I say is a term of endearment, single course operator versus a course that falls under a portfolio of 20 courses, you have to make these changes when they're readily achievable. And oftentimes it comes down to, if you're digging up dirt or making a build adjustment, now the law comes into play if you were built before 1990, and it's a little bit deeper than that. But there are avenues there to give you a little bit of freedom, per se, from having to do everything all at once from a major cost standpoint, called readily achievable. And that's another thing we talk about when we speak with folks. And again, happy to get on a call and talk with anybody about that as well, without wearing you out on government instructions one-on-one, because they are deep. But again, those are I think, tie back into the earlier question about kind of fears and misconceptions about where courses actually stand.
And you talk about that checklist. That's available on your website. That's available that someone can get access. Tell us about that.
Yep, everything on our site is free. That's what we do. And it's www.accessgolf.org. And we've got a resource tab. And most of that good stuff is right there at the top. And we've got a lot of stuff that we've got kind of, down beneath that, off radar, per se, so that the good candy's right there to find when they get to the bowl, right? And so that's kind of where we're at. And it's we like to think it's easy to find. And I manage the website, kind of a one-person show, and so I do my best to keep it as simple as possible, just to find things. And again, easy to get hold of anytime.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dave, and Scott, I think this is kind of maybe one of our kind of final questions a little bit, but no doubt you've kind of come across probably all kinds of amazing individuals, in your travels, especially in the last year, in your role. And one of the things that we've seen a little bit in the last little while here with Golf Industry Guru, for Scott and I, we've kind of been, when we delve deeper into the world of golf around the world, we see all these wonderful efforts that are exposing the great game of golf to individuals that wouldn't normally get exposed to it, right? And I always have said that and felt that those of us that work in the industry, it's not our fault. It's easy to forget how impactful the game is, how special the game is. I mean, when I get on a golf course, I get frustrated when I make my first bogey because, I can't believe the PGA keeps sending me a card every year. Well, I know why, because I keep paying the bill. Because if I stopped paying the bill, I can assure you they wouldn't be sending me my PGA card, because I'm not playing like a member. But we get so immersed in the business of golf that we forget about the enjoyment of golf and how great that is, right? How much getting on the golf course and hitting that one shot or seeing the sunrise or making a birdie or a par or a bogey, can be so grateful to people. So from an inspirational standpoint, I guess, what's some of the examples or an example that I guess motivates you and gives you that satisfaction that you probably have, I know, in our talk, in our other conversations about how important this endeavor is.
Yeah, and so it's I've got 3 answers for you, but they're quick, I promise, right?
No, we have lots of time.
So the first one is kind of timely, and this is just an example of how impactful like we talked about earlier, imagery or seeing something on TV or live can be. And it's, coincidentally, the Waste Management Phoenix Open is right around the corner here. And there's very few golfers on the planet that don't remember 2018 when Gary Woodland was on the par 3 with Amy Bockerstedt. She hits her tee shot into the bunker, and, they're walking up there, they're talking, and Amy's a Special Olympian out of the Arizona area, and I had a chance to meet her at the U.S. Adaptive Open. But beyond that, she's getting ready to go over there and approach her sand shot, and you see kind of Gary say something to the effect of, well, I don't know Gary, but you see Gary Woodland saying, basically, does she need any advice or help? And she says, no, I got this, right? You remember, she says, no, I got this. Can't remember if that was for the bunker shot or the putt, and she hits a spectacular bunker shot out, I think, with 10 or 12 feet, whatever it is, holds the par, right? So the crowd is going crazy. So now in Arizona, they have a I Got This Foundation that fed out of that particular event, and it's run by Tracy Hupko, who used to be at the LPGA, and she's fantastic. And Tracy and I talk all the time, and they're doing beyond local stuff. They've just got some really good plans in place to further the efforts in developing better instructors and students and golfers in their particular space. So it's really fantastic what can simply happen with one single action to kind of get some momentum going. For me personally, I did 5 years teaching with the Salute Military Golf Association, 4 or 5 years with seasonal work up in Maryland. I was in Virginia, and the audience there was post 9/11 combat wounded veterans. And so many of them had very, very significant injuries. I mean, just leave it at that, whatever they were. And I really can't count the number of times I've had or heard those individuals talk to other veterans or do testimonials or even just share me that, golf saved their life, because their lives had changed so dramatically when they came back from the war. They lost their way, they lost their path. They lost a lot of their social interactions with family. And that led to, unfortunately, many of them committing suicide and some of these things. But I just remember one day in particular, I'm on the range there working with this young man, could have been early 20s, no more than that, with his wife, also young, of course. He's got no legs, one arm, in a wheelchair. And to see the satisfaction and the joy in his face, even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes, when he's launching that ball off the turf mat, I don't even know how to really put that in words as far as, what that means for him, but for me, it's a real wake up call. It's a real perspective generator. And again, I had a real pleasure and benefit of being able to attend the U.S. Adaptive Open this year. We've got a great relationship with the USGA, and they were kind enough to let me go hang out at Pinehurst number 6 and just watch 3 days of competition. I watched it start to finish. And again, 96 competitors, quite honestly, ranging in abilities. I mean, some of them were probably not going to win the event, but regardless of that, the esprit de corps and the community of that group and what they do and how strong they feel about where they fit in the golf is just really amazing. And I would encourage anyone to seek and find a way to be a part of it or support it in any way they can. Some organizations, golf courses are better suited for it because you've got a population around you that supports it. Maybe you've got a hospital, maybe you've got a therapeutic organization, maybe you've got a school. But I think look for ways to just do a little bit, and you'll find yourself making some amazing community ties and probably growing things you didn't think were possible at your facility.
Yeah, that's a great. I like what you talked about. Changing your perspective on what's important and what's the priority. And I would imagine that facilities, golf professionals, individuals that create an environment to welcome people of all abilities are better off. I mean, they got to be better off, whether it's the karma world, whether it's the financial world, whether it's the ambiance and the environment and the community. They got to be better off if they've got a facility that is welcoming and open and inclusive and all those types of things, no doubt. Dave, let me ask you about how does the world of off golf course golf interact in your world. We talk about, carts on the green. I mean, when you talk about Top Golf and Putt Shack and all the various different types of various different types of access now. I remember seeing a stat that 1/3 of Americans that played golf last year never stepped on a blade of grass, basically speaking. So, how does that, that's obviously that's an opportunity. Obviously how does that incorporate it into your organization?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, I think I use the term pretty loosely when I say golf course owners and operators, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I get, my brain probably thinks at least green grass when I say it out loud. But, to me, if someone's able to step on your property and hit a golf ball, anywhere downrange, even if that is 20 feet into a net and you've got an awesome bar back behind you with some great food and it's air conditioned and everybody's having a good time, if that gets someone off their couch, swinging a golf club, fantastic. Top Golf is just, and the other ones as well, they're all on an amazing run. I'm not, statistically, I'm not sure for golf in general yet what the connection is to that group of golfers, all golfers becoming green grass golfers. I don't know if you know the folks at Pellucid, Jim Copenhaver and Stuart Lindsay are amazing. And I listened to their State of the Union address this year at the Golf Business Conference, and it's fantastic. Those two guys are great. And he got asked that question about the transition rates, and they're like, no data. No, there's no data on that out there yet. When they say there's no data out there on something, there's no data out there on that. But I can't imagine it's not steering some people towards the golf course. I can't imagine that. And if a golfer's first impression, disabled or not, is the thrill of hitting a golf ball, and they want to take that to a golf course, that's all good by me. I love it. And so we support programs in hospitals. We support programs where we can. There's a great program in Missouri, Kevin Korn. He's gone to the hospital every week for about 11 years. And he hits foam golf balls up on the children's floor, and they gradually migrate when they're ready down to a little turf area they've got outside their facility there. And he's Innsbruck, and Kevin's a great PGA professional. Dana Dempsey at Scottish Rite has a Tee It Up for Teaching program. So those sort of grassroots things that are not necessarily out on the forefront, we look for some of those things to say, okay, what can you do here that's a little bit different? And to a part of the population that is just really, I hate to say the word underserved, that's not a fair word, but there are so many different individuals or types of individuals with disabilities: veteran, non-veteran, young, old, male, female. There's no pick. And the beauty of our stuff is we get to try to help as many of those as we can without being focused on one particular segment, I guess is the best way to say it.
I know that you've told us about your connection, or you've connected with Todd and Paragolf Canada. We've got gig members all over the world. Are there individuals and associations like you in every country? Is that part? Have you been able to reach out collectively? Are you seeing this kind of commitment, dedication, energy put towards accessible golf all over the world? Have you not been able to peel back that onion yet, or what's that about?
Yeah, I guess the best way I can answer that right now is this. It's been a little bit less than a year, and I will say I was instantly jealous of Todd's ability and how he can move the needle. He's amazing with what he does, and it's full of energy. And I consider him, even though we've never personally met, we've talked several times, and he's the kind of person that I could call and ask questions to, about, hey, how are you doing this? What's going on there? Over in Europe, they have the European Disabled Golf Association, and it's pretty big, and it's actually pretty well funded, and to their credit. And they do a lot of competitions, but they're also doing some things underneath that. In the States, when we were formed, 20 years ago, there were certainly organizations doing their own thing, but there was never, I think, a larger synergistic effort to kind of, advocate and educate on a national scale. And so I think they recognized that 20 years ago. And even in 20 years, a lot more organizations have popped up that are all trying to educate and advocate in this space. And I think that's a good thing. So, we're looking at, again, how we fit into that, how we kind of can, I think pool our resources when we can for the betterment of the community, not for a hostile takeover of the world in this particular sort of demographic. We just want to contribute and do our part and help folks that are doing that as well. I hope that answered your question.
Oh no, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Scott, before I thank Dave, is there any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I just in to echo your thought there, James. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, you and the board that you work with are to be commended for the work you're doing. I think it's extremely important, and I'm glad that we're able to talk about the work that you're doing today, and hopefully expose what it is that you do a little bit more to club owners and operators, not only in the U.S. but around the world. So thank you so much for joining us. Extremely educational, and super proud to have you with us today. I think what you guys are doing is great. So keep up the great work for sure.
Well, we really appreciate the opportunity to speak anytime we can, especially with you two. I hope my country accent was understandable by you folks up to the north up there.
Well, you didn't say A enough, but that's okay. We're all good. Dave, how would an operator that's looking for some resources, what's the best way for them to get in touch with NAAG?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing to say on this is just go to our website, www.accessgolf.org, and we've got a phone number on there that I get that rings basically to my phone or voicemail. You can certainly share my contact information with anybody on your distribution list. They're welcome to reach out to me directly at any time, and I pride myself on getting back with individuals quickly. So if you don't hear from me a day or two after you reach out to me, something's wrong. All right. So, but by all means, throw my name around. And like I said, if I can't find the answer, I'm going to find out who has it, and we'll go from there.
Dave, you're a class act, my man. The NAAG is lucky to have you, and we were lucky to have you on our live Q&A call. So thank you so much for your time today. I know you've got when do you get home? When do you get home? Are you on?
Probably Thursday afternoon. I came down here on January 18th and did the PGA show. Got a little family time in between. Got some granddaughter time, which is always good. Which actually, 2 days with my granddaughter is probably more exhausting than a 4-day golf tournament. We built 25 forts with the same 4 pillows and the same blanket on the same couch in about a 4-hour period. So it's all good. And thankfully, my boys are 32 and 33 now. But I forgot how awesome and fatiguing that can be at the same time. So, but I go home in a couple of days. A few more things to do here at the conference. The show actually opens tomorrow at the trade show floor. So going to go down there and check out a bunch of really cool big equipment and do some of those things, network a little bit. And then it's a short drive back up to Charleston, so it's not too bad.
Well, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your schedule. Really appreciate it. Gig Nation, thanks for joining us. If you've been listening live or if you're listening on one of our recorded sessions, reach out to Dave. Look into making your facility accessible to everyone, and everyone will be better off for it. So once again, thanks so much, Dave. Scott, as always, great to see you. And we will see everyone next month on our Golf Industry Guru live Q&A call. But until then, we will see you on the inside.